The New Orleans Secular Humanists Association welcomes everyone who's interested in exploring ideas from the humanist, non-religious perspective.
For me, secular humanism is a philosophy for living and learning. Secular humanists use science and reason to understand the universe and solve human problems.
As a non-religious person, I cannot accept supernatural answers to life's questions. Secular humanists confine their search for the truth to the natural world.
Some of my highest goals in life are expressed in human secularism. To enjoy life in the here and now, and to strive for moral excellence.
We believe in striving for the best and noblest that is possible in human beings.
These viewpoints reflect our philosophy, which applies to all aspects of our lives. Each of our programs will try to apply reason to various interesting topics and show how this approach differs from the dogma of non-humanist thinking. Welcome to our show. I'm Harry Greenberger. I'm the president of the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association and the host for this program. We have a block-busting show for you today. Our very special guest is Jim Brown, who is probably known to most of the people in the city and the state. Well, Jim got his undergraduate degree at the University of North Carolina, also attended Cambridge University in England, and received his Juris Doctorate from Tulane University, which I guess is what brought Jim to our city. But Jim has dedicated, I guess, a great deal of his adult life to public service in the state of Louisiana. More than 30 years ago, he was elected as one of the youngest senators for the state of Louisiana. And 10 years more or less later, he was elected as Louisiana's Secretary of State. And another more or less 10 years expired, and he was elected as the Commissioner of Insurance. Well, now Jim is a host of a regular radio show on one of the South's largest Clear Channel stations, WRNO. He also writes a weekly column. He's an author. I don't know how many books, but I may or may not be right that the most recent one was called Adventures of an Alternative Reality of Living in Louisiana. Have you had a more recent one than that?
Right. That's coming out in about a month. That's coming out in about a month.
So that is Jim is our special guest here today. Now, also on the panel with us, we have another very special person whom you will see in another show as our guest, and that is Farrar Hudkins, whose face may not be familiar to most of you, but his voice will be. I guess primarily Farrar is a musician. He's a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, acquired 20 years of musical training and experience before moving into radio in 2001. He began life as a pianist and then picked up the trumpet at the age of 10. He moved to New Orleans to major in music education at Loyola University in 1997. That is not why we have Farrar on the show today, because we're not really going to talk about music, but he is presently the host on a PBS radio station in New Orleans, WWNO, and a regular contributor to our organization's discussion group with very provocative opinions. So, with having said that, we're going to get on with the show. And Jim, if my memory serves me correctly, a few months ago when I called into your radio show, and at that time we were talking about a very, very controversial movie called The Golden Compass, if you recall, and that's past history. But as I recall, in that process, you mentioned to me that you were somewhat of a libertarian with a lowercase l. Tell us what that would mean as respect to your, how it affects your outlook on life.
Well, I've never, I wanted the government to leave me alone, and I've had some problems with the federal government, as some of your viewers know. But I just think you can take it from a smaller perspective to the larger perspective. I looked at the legislature up there right now and all they've done in Baton Rouge, and I'm wondering, why do we need to have all those laws? The legislature wants to be full-time and meet all around the year and get all these big pay raises. We don't need a full-time legislature. There's enough laws governing you and me as it is right now. Just enforce the good laws and get rid of the bad laws and just leave us alone. We need a legislature meeting all year round. And so I think that's indicative of my thoughts towards the federal government, towards the local concerns. Lay out the framework under which we live, play by the rules, but let's just don't burden us with so much bureaucratic red tape. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not on the left or the right. I'm on the right or the wrong, trying to make that comparison. And that puts me somewhat in the middle, a little bit more conservative as I get a little older, quite frankly, when you're protective of your family. But on the other hand, I just want government to leave us alone. The Republicans up in Washington now, that they're leaving us alone, except they're telling us, everything from how we die to how we live to having babies to everything we do it seems like is interfered with by both parties. And that concerns me as an individual. That's the focus of what I write. That's the focus of what I say on the radio. And I think to some degree, it's a focus of just giving me the freedom to make my decision about religion. I don't want anybody putting anything on me. I'm not concerned about some of the things you and I can talk about today if it doesn't affect my family and me right now. I'm going to let the afterlife take care of itself. But basically, I just want a little bit more freedom than we have in Louisiana under local, state, and certainly under federal laws.
I find your position a little curious in light of the group of radio stations that you're affiliated with, because my impression is they're quite conservative, the people who own and operate those stations. Am I correct about that?
Well, I'm not sure conservative equates to much more regulation. I think if you look at the local hosts, for example, if you take my show and the shows in the morning and the evening, they're not really philosophically that conservative. You get into some of the national concerns. There's no doubt about the fact that national radio, if you take the top 8 or 9 radio hosts, they are Republican-oriented and much more conservative in their slant. But I don't think that reflects what we see on the local level. If you take our station, 99.5 WRNO, you take people like Garland Robinette on WWL, I find them to be much more concerned about just seeing that the focus is done correctly, appalled by some of the things that elected officials have done to us, and basically just want to see that we get a fair shake. I think it's more a fair shake determination, not so much conservative or liberal on the local level, maybe more so on the national level.
Now, when we're talking about conservative and liberal, there are two aspects. There is, I personally am a fiscal conservative and a social liberal, and so how does that? How do you fit into that kind of a dichotomy?
Well, I take each issue as they come. I'm not concerned about labels. I'm concerned more about efficiency, getting the best return for the input we put in. If I'm in a business and I'm with some business partners, I want to get the best return. I want to maximize. I want my kids to maximize their ability. I want the government to maximize. So I look at it more as an efficiency quotient. Are we getting the most for what we're putting into it? Is my money being managed properly? Is my health being taken care of properly? Is there a role for government to take care of my health? I don't think so much for me, because I'm making a little bit more money and I can deal with issues like that. But then you get down to a question of levels of people that can't take care of themselves. There's a role for government to step in. Well, when government does step in, I want to see they do it well. And quite frankly, that's the focus of what I talk about and write about. Often they don't do it well.
Well, since we're talking about government and involvement with our lives, a current matter that has passed through the legislature and been signed into law.